our own Debbie Crandall. So it's beautiful. She's so talented. Okay. No, I meant she really is talented. Okay. Let me start off by just saying, when I think of the 4th of July, I think about soldiers. I don't know really why. It's just something I always think about. And I think about the soldiers who work to bring our country the freedom which we now have and that we enjoy. And I think about the soldiers that are still fighting for freedom all across this land. And so I wanted to share with you a little something. I have an interest in World War II. And it probably began with my dad, who was a soldier in World War II. And he took lots of photos. So this is actually the camera that he used and took with him to Germany. And so when I was younger, I used to love to go through the photo albums and look at the pictures of him and all the things that were going on. And then when I was in high school, we had a Holocaust survivor come and speak to us. And there wasn't a dry eye in that class, and it made such an impression in me. I wanted to learn more about what had happened. So these are part of my books that I read. I've got lots of books at home, but it just fascinates me. And the more I read, the more I became interested in the soldiers' actual stories. Maybe not so much the armory, everything else, but I enjoyed listening to the way the soldiers made it through. And not only the men, but lots of women who served also. And I think this is really important now because in February, the last American soldier from World War I died. So we have no more soldiers from World War I. And now we're losing our World War II soldiers at a rate of about 1,100 a day. So those stories are going with them. So if you know anybody that you can take down their stories, now would be the chance to do it. My dad turned 90, and I don't know how much longer he's going to be around. And he was 22 when he entered the war. So you can see the time span is creeping up on all those soldiers also. And today I want to relate some of the stories that I pulled out of this book about saints that were involved in the war and how they used their faith to keep them going day by day. And the first one I'd like to talk about is Raymond Bascom. Now, Raymond Bascom was a soldier in Belgium just after the Battle of the Bulge, and you might have heard that. It was over an area called Bastogne in Belgium. And during this time, they had already fought the battle and taken the ground. And Raymond was asked by one of his officers if he could drive a Jeep. And Raymond said, "No, I can't drive a Jeep." And then the officer said, "Well, can you drive a Model T?" And he says, "Yeah, I can drive a Model T." "Then you can drive a Jeep." So suddenly he became one of the workers who was, one of the soldiers who was taking the wounded men to an aid station. And so he was ferrying these soldiers back and forth. And then on one other run he made it, loaded in a passenger on the back on a stretcher across the back of his Jeep. And then another soldier was able to sit next to him. And the medical lieutenant came out and said, they're kind of in critical condition. Can you take them into Bastogne? And he asked if we had that part of the road, and the doctor said, well, I'm not sure, but I don't think we do. So, this is where Raymond picks up his story. Down the road I went. It was a little foggy, and when it cleared, I could see there were German soldiers on both sides of the road. I turned to the fellow in front with me and said, "Duck!" I leaned towards him, and he leaned towards me, and I stepped on the gas pedal. The windshield was down, and just looking over the hood, I could see the tracers right in front of me coming from both directions. So it's going kind of like that ride at Disneyland, that Indiana Jones ride where you get the air coming at both of you, except these were real bullets. We went down through that crossfire of machine guns, no less. As we went by, an unseen power took hold of that steering wheel, turning it in one direction and the other. We went over a little rise and maybe half a mile down the road, and there ahead of us were 5 of our tanks. I stopped and told the commander there was a roadblock, and he said, "Yeah, I've been trying to get through that for 2 hours." And that was one of the many times that I was protected. I received the Bronze Star for this. And the Bronze Star is the 4th highest medal that you could get in the Army, and it's for bravery, acts of merit, and meritorious service. So that was Raymond's story. And another story is by someone named Benner A. Hall. And he actually did fight in the Battle of the Bulge. And he was asked to go ahead and go into the town and secure the bridge from the Germans. They wanted to make sure no Germans were coming across a bridge. So he and 2 of his fellow soldiers laid up in an abandoned house. And Benner went to the top he was a sharpshooter. He was an expert marksman, so he went to the top to be able to shoot anybody coming towards them. And 2 other soldiers were in the bottom of the house. And sure enough, there's 2 German soldiers coming across the bridge. And Benner called down and let his friends know. And so as the soldiers approached the house, they called out and said, "Surrender, you're surrounded." And one of the soldiers surrendered, and the other one didn't. He fled. He turned tail and ran. And this is where Benner picks up here. One did, and the other didn't surrender. I shot at the fleeing soldier, but I missed. I couldn't believe it. Later, a patrol captured the soldier. They had found him praying. When I met him, I found out he was a Latter-day Saint, baptized by one of my friends from our hometown of Mesa, Arizona. So the Lord was not only watching out for our soldiers, he was watching out for those worthy men on all sides. One other thing I'd like to kind of talk about, we leave the European theater of operations, and we kind of move toward the Pacific theater of operations. So now we're going to where the Japanese are fighting the Americans. And you might have heard about the Bataan Death March. Has anybody heard about that? A few of you have. Now the Bataan, let me show you with this. Bataan is in the Philippines, and at the very bottom, this is where our soldiers were. So they were in the very bottom of this point. And Corregidor was a little island later where there was a big battle between the Japanese and the Americans. But right now, our soldiers and the Filipinos are trying to hold out this area. Now, General Douglas MacArthur, he was in that operation and decided